Welcome back, YouTubers, to another NXT review with me, Mr. Parkin, the first NXT review after WrestleMania 31. And I must admit, I do have a lot I actually want to talk about in this review because a lot to do with NXT has happened on WrestleMania and the post-WrestleMania Raw. So if you have any thoughts on anything that I'm going to talk about in this video, anything NXT related, please let me know down in that comment section below. And the first thing I really want to discuss here, above anything else, is the rumblings that apparently WWE want to do these NXT TakeOver specials once a month. Kind of like they do with the pay-per-views, once a month. And to be honest with you, I really don't think that is a good idea, really, to be honest with you. What made those NXT TakeOver shows so special and always feel good and always come across a lot better, in my opinion, was that old school feeling of knowing you're only going to get 4 or 5 a year. If you know you're only getting a certain amount a year, they feel a little bit more special. Now, I just think that if they're going to do one a month, that they're just going to seem very rushed with only 1 hour of TV, and the matches won't feel as special, and the moments won't feel as special, and the payoffs won't feel as special. So as for those TakeOver specials once a month, while it may seem like a good idea, you know, as it's been so successful for WWE, or NXT in particular, and the WWE Network, it's not really one of those things you want to oversaturate too much, in my opinion, which is why I am not for them doing NXT TakeOver specials once a month. I just, like I said, think that it's just going to rush everything, and that's really not what NXT is all about, with having an hour of TV a week. So we officially opened up the show with the return to NXT of Sami Zayn, and it was great to see Sami Zayn, and it seemed like the crowd felt the same way too. Sami Zayn's message was very short, it was very sweet, it was very clear. All he's been thinking about lately is Kevin Owens, and he wants to use his rematch to kick his ass. Like I said, short, sweet, to the point, and effective. That's all we really needed to hear from Sami Zayn. What's been going on this last month, and what he intends to do after what happened at the last NXT TakeOver special. Short, sweet, to the point. So for the second time, we had Rhino squashing some guy in NXT. It kind of looked a little bit like Ty Dillinger, but he was in the show later, so I don't really know whether it was or not. I couldn't really tell. And it looks like Rhino wants a shot at the NXT Championship. Oh boy. You know, while I'm not a massive fan of veterans like Rhino in NXT, I think at least if he's going to be there, some of the top talents in NXT, such as Sami Zayn, who we had a bit of a stare down with, such as Finn Balor, who he's had a bit of a stare down with, I think they could really benefit from working with someone like Rhino, who's kind of been there and done that in the wrestling business. You know, he never really was a massive star or anything, but at least he knows what it's all about. And I think some of these NXT talents could learn a little bit from working with him. They could learn from having a bit of a program with him. But as for Rhino wanting a shot at the NXT Championship, working with NXT talents, okay. Going after the NXT Championship, no. So on the Raw after WrestleMania, we got our first look on the WWE roster at Adrian Neville, although he debuted on the WWE roster as Neville. Now, they've done things like that with people like Alexander Rusev, who became Rusev, Antonio Cesaro, who became Cesaro, Big E Langston, that became Big E. So it's no real surprise they dropped the Adrian out of the Neville name, and they're just calling him Neville. That's fair enough. You know, and he looked very impressive in his match against Michael McGillicuddy or Axel Mania or Curtis Axel or whatever the fuck he wants to be called now. But then again, them two have worked quite a lot in NXT, so they're very familiar with each other. And you know, while I do like Adrian Neville, and I think that Red Arrow finisher could be a great way to end the match and a real great way of getting him over, and his high-flying style could bring something very different to the WWE, I just wonder if WWE really have brought him in with a long-term plan, or if they just brought him in to have a couple of matches, win a couple of matches, not really have any direction for him, and end up back at NXT. This is my only worry for someone like Adrian Neville, is I mean, I know Triple H likes the guy, but does Vince McMahon really want to put his money and effort behind a guy like Adrian Neville? I don't know. I just get the feeling, and I know I'm very negative, and I know that I'm kind of, really ruining a lot of people's buzz on Neville, but why do I just get the feeling that in about a month or two's time, he's going to become irrelevant and he's not going to be featured in any way. He's going to start losing on WWE TV and he's going to end up back in NXT. That's all I'm saying. And I really, really don't want that to happen to Adrian Neville because he's much too talented for that. But I just think it will happen. I mean, that's just me. In other news, apparently WWE have granted the release of CJ Parker. You know, not a bad little character in NXT, but he was never really going to do anything on the main roster. And I hear the reason why he wanted this release is because he didn't want to be one of those guys that was stuck in developmental and didn't really go anywhere. And that's fair enough, really. If he feels he can do something better elsewhere, then good for him. I think that is the right career choice for CJ Parker because I really couldn't see him moving anywhere from developmental, really, to be honest with you. I don't think WWE would ever call the CJ Parker character up. So, whatever he's doing now, I wish CJ Parker luck. Even if he's going to be an environmentalist now. It's joking. So, Bayley versus Emma. You know, they've been trying to build some beef between these two over the past few weeks, trying to do something different with Emma. And they had a match. Don't really know what to say. Becky Lynch, though. Becky Lynch wants a title shot, so I imagine some point down the line, she will be getting a title shot. She cut actually a pretty decent backstage promo here, and I think that a feud between her and Sasha Banks could be very good. Becky Lynch versus Sasha Banks. That could be a good feud. Bayley and Emma. So the Lucid Dragons had a tag match against Blake and Murphy, the current NXT Tag Team Champions. And it looks like Lucid Dragons were doing the job on the way out as they debuted on Raw after WrestleMania. And they looked very good in my opinion. You know, they were quite over with the crowd in their 8-man tag match. They got the win. Kalisto, I think, is a definite standout out of that tag team. And I've said it ever since this tag team was made. So, Lucid Dragons debuted on the Raw roster. Very good. You know, I thought spotlighting them in that 8-man tag match, they did a very good job there. And like I said, they looked very good. And I think as a tag team, Lucid Dragons could work on the main roster, especially if they are over. But I say it once again, why do I just get the feeling that they're going to be relevant for a little while, then WWE are just going to lose it with them, and then they're going to end up back in NXT at some point? Once again, I hope I'm wrong. But with WWE, you just have to think that, do they know what they're doing long term? Especially when they bring in NXT talents. You know, when they bring up someone like Charlotte, for example, is the same going to happen with her? You know, I know it sounds cynical, but I've got to put it out there because it's happened to so many characters on NXT. Think about Emma. You think about guys like Adam Rose. They failed with The Ascension. They failed with Bo Dallas. They kind of failed with Biggie Langston. They failed for a long time with Cesaro. There's so many talents from that NXT roster that they brought up and then really had nothing for. And I really think that if you're going to bring these NXT guys up, that you need to have some kind of long-term plan for them. Otherwise, they'll fall into obscurity with the casual audience and the casual fans, and then you really have nothing for them. So, I know it sounds cynical, but I have to say these things because they're really, really, really on my mind when they bring people up from the NXT roster. So Ty Dillinger and Jason Jordan had a match, and, you know, there has been a bit of beef between these two, and, you know, Jason Jordan walked out on Ty Dillinger in a tag match, and I guess they didn't really want to do too much more with this one and just go straight into the match. And generally speaking, when WWE does this, that's never really a good sign. Really, I mean, when you have a tag team breakup, generally there's a storyline there. Generally, there's a bit of, you know, build up to a feud. We've seen that with many tag teams, but when they just go straight into a match, you know it's not going to work. Do you remember when they did that whole thing with Heath Slater and Justin Gabriel? Then they had them have a match on SmackDown, and then we never really saw much of them two after that. Remember Darren Young and Titus O'Neil? They didn't really do too much there, and they're both worse off for it. And I just wonder if it'll be the same for Ty Dillinger and Jason Jordan. Now, I think Jason Jordan could be could benefit from some kind of singles push on NXT. I really do. But only if they do it right. I mean, I really don't know what they're trying to do with either character here. You know, I didn't really know who was supposed to be heel and who was supposed to be babyface. I mean, Jason Jordan came out smiling, seemed like he was playing to the crowd a little bit, and then in the match, I kind of think he's heel, and you kind of feel Dillon just a baby. You know, I didn't really know what was going on here. I don't know whether that's just because Jason Jordan hasn't been a babyface, or I don't know, but I just didn't get a very good feeling as to what was actually going on here with these two characters. I don't know. But did anyone else see NXT trying to make Jason Jordan into Kurt Angle? I don't know, I just saw flashes of WWE Kurt Angle booking here with the amateur style and the amateur background and the way that Jason Jordan was approaching this match and the mannerisms, etc. Did anyone else spot that? Couldn't have been the only one. So our main event of NXT was Tyler Breeze versus Hideo Itami in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And my initial feeling going into this was they're really not going to give this match much time, are they? I thought they would give a 2 out of 3 falls match at least 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, maybe half an hour on the show. Kind of like they did with Finn Balor versus Kevin Owens last week. So immediately I'm thinking, well, something's going to happen here, which is going to speed up. There's probably going to be 2 quick falls and then a good match to end the 2 out of 3 falls. That's pretty much what we got here. We had Hideo Itami getting the clean victory, and then Tyler Breeze getting the first of his falls by sort of playing injured, tricking the referee, and then beauty shotting Hideo Itami. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, it was a good match, don't get me wrong. I mean, we knew these two were going to have a good match. But as I was watching this match, as has happened many times in the WWE, I just found myself losing interest. I find myself doing other things. I find myself looking at other web pages. I find myself on Facebook. I find myself on Twitter. You know, maybe it's because I've just seen these two face off so often, and I've seen pretty much what these two can do. Maybe it's because I'm fed up of seeing what seems like every single move being some kind of kick or some kind of high spot. I don't know. And to be honest, I was surprised they had Tyler Breeze go over here. And, you know, this seemed like the logical blow-off for the feud. In some kind of big style match where Hideo Itami could go over and move the fuck on from Tyler Breeze. You know, not to mention the fact that it was Hideo Itami who got to compete at WrestleMania out of that Battle Royal, and he's losing to Tyler Breeze. You know, I'm all for heels getting victories, etc., but I just don't want to see another match between these two, because I'm already kind of getting bored of seeing these two, especially in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And in a match which is supposed to be the blow-off of a feud, you'd imagine, it's not good when, you know, when people such as myself are getting bored of it. You know, it's just what happens when you just have match, and then you expect the blow-off to be in a match. It's kind of what it's like. Anyway, let's forget about that. Let's move on. Next week, it seems like we'll be having an episode of NXT which was taped at WrestleMania Access. I am actually very much looking forward to next week's show, because much like the show they had in Columbus, Ohio, I was very much looking forward to see how they would present NXT and how it would look, you know, in a different location. And pretty much the same here. I know WrestleMania Access is quite well presented. I know that WWE have got quite a big NXT following going into WrestleMania. We've seen some of the post-WrestleMania crowds chanting NXT. NXT is becoming a more widely recognized brand, you know, especially on the WWE network. So that show at WrestleMania Access should be a pretty good thing to watch. So I'm looking forward to that. As for this week's edition of NXT, I don't think it was the best show this week, to be honest. I thought, for a start, the flow of the show just wasn't very good. I mean, you had Rhino squashing someone, you had Bayley and Emma doing, I don't know, what the fuck. Lucid Dragons and Blake and Murphy was a decent match. Ty Dillinger and Jason Jordan was and Tyler Breeze and Hideo Itami I was kind of getting a little bit bored of halfway through. So I can hardly say this week's edition of NXT was very entertaining. I really felt that last week's show set the formula for what shows of main events should have. I mean, last week's main event took up over half of the show, and there was a couple of matches at the start that, you know, really did a lot to try and enhance other things on the show. I really thought they would try and do the same this week, but it almost felt like they were trying to do a little bit too much. And they didn't really give the allotted time, in my opinion, to the main event. That's just my opinion. If you have any thoughts on this show, maybe you really enjoyed that Tyler Breeze versus Hideo Itami match, let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching if you have. And I hope you guys enjoyed WrestleMania. I thought it was a surprisingly enjoyable and entertaining show. But maybe that's just because I was looking at it as a fan rather than as a critic and a reviewer. So maybe that kind of works in my favor a little bit. But anyway, see you same time next week. Goodbye.